The evening started like any other quiet evening in Portland. The sky was gray, the air was cool, and the streets were calm. Ethan Parker had just returned home after a long day at work. He lived in a small apartment near a park where tall trees turned golden every fall. He liked that neighborhood because it was peaceful. After years of family tension and emotional stress, he had learned to value calm moments. Ethan made himself a cup of coffee and sat near the window. From there, he could see people walking their dogs in cars slowly passing by. Life had been simple lately, and he was trying to keep it that way. He had stopped involving himself in family problems. In the past, family gatherings often came with arguments, uncomfortable silence, and secrets that people tried to hide with fake smiles. Ethan didn't hate his family, but he had chosen distance for his own peace. He was thinking about the next day's work when someone knocked on the door. It was a firm knock. Not loud, but serious enough to make him look up immediately. Visitors rarely came without calling first. Most of his friends would text him before showing up. Ethan walked to the door, slightly confused when he opened it. He was completely stunned. Standing in the hallway were his two aunts, Linda and Rebecca. For a moment, Ethan just stared at them. It wasn't that he didn't care about them. He did, but seeing them together like this felt strange. In his entire life, he could not remember a time when both of them had arrived at his place unannounced, especially together. Linda gave him a soft, tired smile. "Hi, Ethan," she said. Rebecca crossed her arms lightly, trying to look calm. But Ethan could tell something was wrong. "Are you just going to keep staring?" Rebecca said with a faint smile. "Or are you going to let us in?" Ethan quickly stepped aside. "Of course. Come in." They walked inside slowly, looking around the apartment. It was simple but comfortable. A couch, a small table, a bookshelf, and a few framed photos on the wall. Linda looked like she had been thinking deeply about something for a long time. Rebecca looked restless, as if she had too many thoughts running through her mind. Ethan closed the door and turned to them. "This is a surprise," he said. "Is everything okay?" Neither of them answered immediately. That silence made Ethan uneasy. Linda finally spoke. "We hope we didn't come at a bad time." "No," Ethan said. "I was just relaxing." He gestured toward the couch. "Sit down." They both sat down, and Ethan noticed how serious their expressions were. This wasn't a casual visit. He had a strange feeling in his chest. Rebecca looked at Linda as if telling her to start. Linda took a slow breath. "Ethan," she said, "we didn't know who else to talk to." That sentence alone made Ethan realize something serious was going on. He sat across from them. "What happened?" Rebecca rubbed her hands together. That was something she did when she was nervous, and Ethan remembered it from years ago. "It's complicated," she said quietly. Ethan leaned forward slightly. "You came all the way here together," he said. "It must be important." Linda nodded slowly. "Yes, it is." For a moment, the room felt heavier than before. Outside, the wind moved the leaves on the street. Then Linda said something that surprised him. "It's about our marriages, Ethan." Blink. He had expected many possible reasons for their visit, but that wasn't one of them. Both of his aunts had been married for many years. In family gatherings, they often appeared normal, not perfect, but stable. Hearing doubt in Linda's voice changed the picture completely. "What do you mean?" Ethan asked. Rebecca sighed deeply. "It means things are not what they look like anymore." Ethan didn't interrupt. He could sense they needed to explain everything in their own way. Linda spoke again, her voice softer now. "You know your Uncle Mark has always been busy with work." Ethan nodded. Mark was known as a hard-working man. He was serious, quiet, and always seemed focused on business. As a child, Ethan had respected him. Linda continued. "But recently he has been different." "Different how?" Ethan asked. Linda paused before answering. "Distant, cold sometimes, and secretive." Rebecca leaned forward slightly. "Found messages on his phone." Ethan's eyebrows lifted. What kind of messages? Linda looked uncomfortable, as if remembering something painful. They were conversations with someone I didn't know, she said quietly. Late at night, hidden chats. The room fell silent. Ethan didn't want to jump to conclusions, but the situation sounded serious. Rebecca spoke again. Her tone steady but emotional. And before you ask, yes, my situation isn't much better. Ethan looked at her. What happened with Uncle Daniel? Rebecca gave a small, bitter laugh. That's exactly the problem. I'm not sure what's happening with him anymore. She looked down at the table for a moment, then back up. He's been acting strange for months. How strange? Ethan asked. Rebecca leaned back, thinking carefully. He started coming home late. Sometimes he wouldn't answer calls. Then he'd act overly nice the next day, like he was trying to make up for something. Ethan listened quietly, Linda added. At first we thought maybe it was stress or work problems. Rebecca nodded, but then things started adding up. Ethan felt a strange tension building inside him, two marriages having problems at the same time. It felt like more than coincidence. Did you talk to them? Kana asked. Linda nodded slowly. I tried, but every time I asked something serious, Mark would avoid the question or change the subject. Rebecca shrugged. Daniel did the same. Ethan crossed his arms, thinking that must be really hard. Linda gave a small, sad smile. It is. Rebecca looked around the apartment, then back at Ethan. That's why we came here. Ethan tilted his head slightly. I'm not sure I understand yet. Linda looked at him carefully, as if choosing her words. We trust you, Ethan. Those words surprised him. Why me? He asked. Rebecca answered this time, because you're honest. And you're not involved in the family drama anymore? That was true. Ethan had stepped away from many things after past arguments and misunderstandings in the family, Rebecca continued. And also because you notice things people miss. Ethan was quiet for a moment. He didn't know whether to feel honored or worried. Linda looked nervous now. We've been thinking about this for days before coming here. Ethan felt the weight of their words, and he asked. Rebecca exchanged a glance with Linda. Then she said something that made Ethan's heart beat faster. We need help figuring out what's really going on. Ethan frowned slightly. You think something bigger is happening? Linda hesitated before answering. I don't know, she admitted. But my heart tells me something isn't right. Rebecca added quietly. And when both of us started noticing strange things at the same time, it scared us. Ethan looked at them carefully. They were serious. This wasn't just a moment of emotional stress. Something had pushed them to come, all the way to his apartment together outside. The rain started falling gently. The soft sound filled the silence in the room. Ethan stood up and walked to the kitchen area. Do you want tea or coffee? He asked. Tea would be nice, Linda said. Rebecca nodded. While preparing the tea, Ethan thought about everything he had just heard. He remembered family dinners, conversations, the way his uncles acted. He tried to recall if he had ever noticed anything unusual. When he returned with the cups, both of his aunts looked slightly calmer, but their eyes still carried worry. They took the tea and thanked him. Linda held the cup with both hands as if trying to warm herself. Ethan, she said gently, we didn't come here to cause trouble. I know, he replied. We just want to understand the truth, Rebecca added. Ethan looked at them again in that moment. They didn't look like strong adults who had everything under control. They looked like two people who were afraid of losing something important. Linda spoke again. When you spend years loving someone, you never expect to feel like a stranger in your own marriage. Ethan felt that sentence deeply. Rebecca nodded slowly, and sometimes she said, you start noticing things you ignored before. The rain outside grew stronger. Ethan leaned forward. So what exactly are you asking from me? Linda hesitated. Rebecca answered, we want you to help us figure out what they're hiding. Ethan's mind raced. That's a big request. Linda, nodded. "We know," Rebecca added, "but we wouldn't ask if we had another choice." Ethan looked at both of them carefully. They weren't angry, they weren't trying to start a fight, they just looked hurt and uncertain. That made the situation even heavier. He took a deep breath. "I need to understand everything first," he said. Linda nodded quickly. "We'll tell you everything." Rebecca looked serious now. All the details. Ethan realized his quiet evening had completely changed. Just an hour ago, he had been watching leaves fall outside his window, thinking about simple things. Now he was sitting in the middle of something emotional and complicated. And somehow, both of his aunts believed he was the only one who could help them. The rain continued falling as the conversation went deeper. None of them knew yet how much this night would change their lives. But one thing was certain. This was only the beginning of a story none of them had expected. The next morning arrived quietly, but Ethan did not feel rested at all. He had slept only a few hours. His mind kept replaying the conversation from the night before. Linda's worried eyes, Rebecca's serious voice, and the strange feeling that something bigger was hidden beneath everything they had said. Ethan woke up early and walked to the nearby cafe where they had agreed to meet. The air was cool and the streets were still calm. He kept thinking about his uncles, Mark and Daniel. For years they had seemed like normal men with normal lives. Nothing about them had ever made Ethan suspicious. But now things felt different. When Ethan reached the cafe, Linda and Rebecca were already there, sitting near the window. Linda looked tired but determined. Rebecca looked focused, like someone who had made up her mind about something important. Ethan joined them and sat down. "Morning," he said. "Morning," Linda replied softly. Rebecca nodded. "Thanks for coming." A waitress placed coffee in front of them, and for a moment no one spoke. The quiet between them felt heavy but honest. Ethan decided to break it. "All right," he said. "Tell me everything." Linda looked at Rebecca, then back at Ethan. "We'll start from the beginning," she said. Over the next several minutes, they explained things in more detail than they had the night before. Linda talked about how Mark had slowly changed over the past year. At first it was small things. Late work meetings, quiet phone calls, long periods where he seemed distracted even when he was sitting right next to her. She had tried to ignore it down. After many years of marriage, people often get busy or tired. She told herself that was normal, but then one evening she noticed something strange. Mark had left his phone on the table while he went to the kitchen. A message appeared on the screen. It wasn't just a normal message. It was written in a way that made her feel uncomfortable immediately. She hadn't opened it fully, but the words were enough to shake her. After that night, Linda started noticing more things. Mark locking his phone more often. Mark stepping outside when certain calls came in. Mark avoiding deeper conversations about their relationship. Rebecca listened quietly while Linda spoke. But Ethan could tell she had her own story ready. When Linda finished, Rebecca leaned forward slightly. "My story is similar," she said. "But there's something else." Ethan looked at her carefully. "What do you mean?" Rebecca took a breath. "Daniel and Mark have been spending a lot of time together recently." Ethan frowned. "They're brothers-in-law. That's not unusual." "Yes," Rebecca said, "but this is different." She explained that the two men had suddenly started meeting frequently for business talks and trips. At first she believed it was normal, but then the timing of their absences started matching too closely. Sometimes both men were gone at the same time. Sometimes both came home acting distracted, and sometimes both avoided questions in almost the same way. That detail made Ethan pause. "You think they're hiding something together?" he asked. Linda nodded slowly. "That's what scares us," Rebecca continued. "We don't know if it's just work or if there's something else." Ethan thought about it carefully. The situation was strange, but he knew jumping to conclusions could cause serious damage. "Did you confront them about this?" he asked. Linda shook her head. "Not directly. I wanted to be sure before accusing anyone, Rebecca added. If we're wrong, we don't want to destroy our marriages over a misunderstanding. Ethan respected that. It showed they still cared deeply about their relationships. He leaned back and thought for a moment. So, what exactly do you want me to do? Linda answered gently. We want you to observe. Talk to them if possible. See things from the outside. Rebecca nodded. They trust you. They've always liked you. That was true. Ethan had always had a decent relationship with both men. They respected his independence and often spoke with him like an equal rather than just a younger family member. Still, this situation felt delicate. If I help, Ethan said carefully, we need to do this calmly. No assumptions. Linda quickly agreed. Of course. Rebecca nodded as well. Ethan took another sip of coffee and looked out the window. People were starting to fill the streets. The city was waking up, but his mind was focused on one thing. Now, the truth, later that day, Ethan decided to visit Mark's office. He didn't mention anything about the conversation with his aunts. Instead, he kept it casual. Mark welcomed him warmly. Ethan, it's been a while, Mark said with a smile. They sat in his office and talked about work, life, and small things at first. Ethan watched him carefully. Mark seemed normal, maybe a little tired, but nothing obviously suspicious. However, Ethan noticed one thing. Whenever Mark's phone buzzed, he checked it quickly and then placed it face down. It might have been nothing, but Ethan noticed it after a while. Ethan casually mentioned Daniel. I heard you've been working with Uncle Daniel more these days. Mark smiled slightly. Yeah, we've been discussing some projects. What kind of projects? Ethan asked calmly. Mark paused for a brief moment before answering, business opportunities. The answer was vague. Ethan didn't push further. Instead, he changed the topic and continued the conversation normally. After leaving the office, he thought about what he had seen. It didn't prove anything, but it also didn't clear anything that evening. Ethan met Rebecca and Linda again to share what happened. Linda listened carefully. Rebecca crossed her arms, thinking. So he didn't say much about it. Rebecca said no, Ethan replied. But he didn't seem nervous either. Linda looked slightly confused. That makes it even harder to understand. A few days passed, and Ethan continued paying attention to things quietly. He visited Daniel as well, pretending he needed advice about a career decision. Daniel welcomed him just as warmly during their conversation. Ethan noticed something similar. Daniel also mentioned business plans with Mark, but again, the details were unclear. It felt like both men were protecting something, but what? One evening, something unexpected happened. Rebecca called Ethan. Her voice sounded shocked. You need to come over, she said. Ethan drove to her house immediately. When he arrived, Linda was there too. Both women looked tense. What happened? Ethan asked. Rebecca showed him something on her phone. It was a message thread she had discovered. Accidentally, while Daniel was in the shower. The messages were between Daniel and Mark. But what surprised Ethan was not the fact that they were messaging each other. It was the content. The conversation was about planning something important. But it didn't look like an affair or betrayal. It looked like a surprise. A big one. Linda read the messages again carefully. And slowly her expression changed. Wait, she said quietly. Ethan looked at her. What is it? Linda pointed at one line in the message. It mentioned a date, an anniversary date. Her anniversary. Rebecca's eyes widened as well. Why would they be planning something like this secretly? Rebecca asked. Ethan thought about it. Maybe because they wanted it to be a surprise. For a moment, no one spoke. The tension in the room slowly shifted into confusion. Linda sat down, processing everything. After all these weeks, she said softly, I thought the worst. Rebecca shook her head slightly. I did too. Ethan felt relief but also realized how easily doubt can grow when communication breaks down. A few days later, the truth became clear. Mark and Daniel had indeed been working together, but not for something bad. They were secretly planning a business investment that would allow them to spend more time with their families in the future. At the same time, they had also been organizing a surprise anniversary celebration for both Linda and Rebecca. They had wanted it to be perfect, but in trying to keep it secret, they had accidentally created distance and suspicion when everything finally came out during a family dinner. Emotions filled the room. Linda was both relieved and emotional. Rebecca laughed, shaking her head. "You two almost gave us heart attacks," she told them. Mark looked surprised when he learned how worried they had been. "We just wanted to do something special," he said. Daniel nodded. "We didn't realize we were making things look worse." Ethan watched the scene quietly. It was messy, emotional, but also real. Linda looked at Ethan later that evening. "Thank you," she said. Rebecca smiled warmly. "You helped us face our fears instead of letting them destroy everything." Ethan realized something important that night. Sometimes relationships are not broken by betrayal. Sometimes they are tested by silence, misunderstanding, and fear. And sometimes the truth turns out to be something no one expected. But the courage to seek the truth can save more than people realize.